Have you ever wondered what would happen if you took horse ranch and cottage living, but just made it tiny? Well, that's exactly what our build is today, so let's hop on over and take a look. Hi there everybody, my name is Ash and welcome to our speed build video. This speed build is actually a lot that is in my from scratch world. I built this over on my Twitch streams, and really the idea of a from scratch world, if you've never heard about it before, is essentially just bulldozing every single lot and starting fresh, giving yourself a clean slate for full creative inspiration. So that is what this is. So this is one of the smaller lots within Newcrest, and Newcrest is obviously a blank world, so it's very easy for a from scratch world to start in Newcrest because obviously it is its own blank slate. I really found a lot of inspiration here with this idea of building a cozy cottage for someone who is really into gardening, who is really into a lot of those very farmhouse skills. So you've got stuff for handiness here, you've got stuff for flower arranging, you've got a chicken coop, but obviously first and foremost has to come the house. And when it came to building this house, I really struggled for a minute on deciding on the exterior colors. I couldn't decide if I wanted like a paneling, if I wanted to do a log cabin, but then I really came down to wanting to do something brick, because I thought that brick really made more of the cottage vibe that I was going for, but I knew that I wanted to have this sort of contrast between the lighter wood that really is a staple of horse ranch, but also a staple of cottage living. And so I ended up going for this sort of dark rock paver wall. And so you'll see that that is what ends up being the final product of that. So we're kind of just going in right now and doing a lot of the exterior, a lot of the floor planning. I really wanted to add this sort of overhang balcony because I think that it really adds to the cozy vibe that we're going for. So that was really kind of important. That was the biggest goal with this, was just cozy. And the beautiful thing about this is that not only is it cozy in the sense of its aesthetic, but it's also a tiny home. So it is the tier 2 of the tiny homes. So it doesn't have the full benefits of like a micro home, but you do still get a lot of benefits on the second tier, such as double the comfort and your skills growing twice as fast. So it's a really beautiful thing. You'll see here in the build, I had an idea to try something of like mimicking that dark stone inside, thinking like, oh, maybe the sim wanted to keep like the dark stone that was original to the exterior. But then I was looking at it and I was like, this is a dungeon. This looks too much like a dungeon. It's dark, it's dank. This is not the vibe that we're going for. So I ended up switching it out for this wallpaper that comes as part of cottage living. And I think that that really made it super cute. So one thing about me as a builder is that I do jump around a lot. So right now I'm in the kitchen, but you'll see that over time I kind of go all over the place. But we start in the kitchen because obviously the kitchen is one of those things that, in my opinion, for a gardener, or for just a general like cottage vibe, the kitchen really pulls it out. So we're going with the cottage living shelving and counters. We're going for the cottage living fridge and stove and sink. And it really is this beautiful sort of teal color. Here you'll see that I started to try to figure out how I wanted to do a window in the kitchen, and I wanted to do it over the stove because I didn't want it to clip with the upper shelves, but it kind of like didn't match up with how I wanted it to parallel with the bathroom window. So I ended up moving the stove and kind of flipping that around, but I did really like how those windows came out. You'll see that I added a little just stairway down to the backyard. And then we kind of go into doing more of the bedroom, getting some of those furniture pieces, trying to decide on a desk, figure out what I wanted to do there. I really liked the idea of having that nook as like a desk nook. And eventually I end up reshaping the bedroom in order to fit more because a double bed was not going to end up fitting there. But first we have to add more of the exterior windows. And this is part of where I say that like I really do jump around. I am someone who is all over the place in my builds. Wherever the inspiration takes me, I follow. So we're going to windows, and then we're gonna look at pavers and, all over the place. But I think that in some ways it gives me the opportunity to find things as I find them. So that's one of the ways that I do clutter, is really just finding what I can within the clutter menu, and then just like, oh, this would be good in the bedroom, this would be good in the living room, this would be good outside. But we'll get to clutter towards the end. Right now I'm working in the bedroom some. I wanted to kind of decide on what I wanted for the bed, and this was where I had talked about, like, we moved the room over so that way we could actually fit the double bed and have both of those sides open. We're adding some garden planters to that front patio, but that is not the only place that your sim can garden. We also have some planter boxes in the backyard, and like I mentioned earlier, also a chicken coop. So it really is that gardener's oasis where you can get all kinds of stuff. And I believe because those planters are on the front patio, they're counted as being covered, which means that you can grow any plant from any season and it will thrive throughout the year, which is just one of those features from seasons that is both good and bad. So you got to kind of run with that. And you'll see that here in the bathroom, I'm adding the shower and the panel from Sleek Bathroom Kit. And this is a good moment to caveat that while this build is very inspired by Horse Ranch Cottage Living, it is definitely not a limited pack build. I let myself kind of run free on whatever I wanted to build with it, so apologies for that. But I really do like how it turned out. I think there's this idea that this is a young adult sim, so in some ways they do prefer like the cozier side of things because this is more of a ranch style. However, they still like modern luxuries, so things like the modern shower, it really fits. Here, we're kind of working into the living room space. I thought that maybe they wouldn't have too big of a TV, because my thought is that maybe they're using the TV to watch a movie with their partner, maybe they're using the TV to turn on the cooking channel while they're cooking in the kitchen, but for the most part, I do not see this sim as someone who watches TV a lot. I really see them as someone who spends a lot more time outside, so to me, having a big TV was not the priority. I did struggle with coming up with what I wanted for like the sofa, but I ended up going with this love seat from Life and Death. And then my thought with this bookcase is like, I just imagine them having so many books related to gardening and plants and like skills. I'm imagining the sim has like so many of those skill building books for all levels so they can kind of build their skills. Here I wanted to put something that was related to skill building, and my original thought was maybe a piano. Then I was thinking, oh, maybe this sim could be a nectar maker, but none of it felt right. So we ended up going with a violin because I thought that that was very easy to fit in, but it's still also very cute. And then a record player, because having a speaker is a beautiful thing in your Sim's house, especially if you decide to host things, but also just it's an easy way to get up your Sim's fun. And then trying to decide on a rug in here was definitely difficult. It took some time because the spacing is a little bit odd, but I still wanted a rug to be able to pull it together. So I really took some time to have to figure out what rug was going to fit that shape. Then we kind of added a plant. I loved that plant that I had there in theory, but not in practice. So we ended up going with the olive tree that comes with the Sleek Bathroom Kit. I think that that's beautiful, honestly. It's very nice textured. So it really fits in well with a lot of different builds. And then we're kind of hopping outside and finally doing the backyard. I wanted to really kind of have the backyard be a central fixture because really the sim is so focused on the outdoors. They're a gardener. They want to own a ranch one day. I can imagine this sim being someone who is very aspirational. They hope to one day own, a ranch of their own, either live in Henford-on-Bagley or Chestnut Ridge, be able to own horses one day, but right now, the place that they're in their life, that's just not feasible. So they're choosing this sort of smaller cottage as a way to get themselves started. Maybe they sell at a farmer's market on occasion in order to try and start saving up money. Maybe they end up buying mini goats and sheep so they can host ranch days on their little cottage farm. Because I can really just imagine that one day they will end up somewhere else, that this is not their forever home. And I think that that's something that is really beautiful is for you to kind of plan, like, what is your sim gonna start with, and then work towards that dream home. So here I'm kind of building out the back patio. I really created a separation between the back patio space, which is like an entertaining space, a skill building space, and then more of that yard space, which has the chicken coop and the planters. And so on the skill building side of it, the hosting side of it, we have the grill from Horse Ranch, we have the flower arranging table, we have the handiness table, we have a bike, because thankfully the world of The Sims seems to be much more walkable than our modern world. So having a bike can be a really fun thing for your Sims. I decided to add a recycling machine because I could imagine the sim where they do a lot of the handiness, they could kind of do a lot of recycling, using eco parts in order to upgrade their appliances. So I think that that could be something that really fits into the arc of this sim. So now we're getting to the point where we're starting to do cluttering. And this first bit, we're kind of like adding little things, testing things out as we're running through the clutter menu. So I'm adding a lot of different gardening clutter outside, some empty pots. Eventually I go back out there and I add like a bag of soil and a watering can and things like that. We add some art to the wall, and this is like very aspirational. Again, the sim really wants to eventually live in Chestnut Ridge or in Henford-on-Bagley. So this idea of keeping this image above their record player in the living room is really their aspiration. So we're kind of adding things like shoes to the front door, a coat rack. Here we are adding the garden clutter. So, you know, just really making it very homey, because that's really the thing, is that Sims homes that feel more homey, they feel more real. So I really loved being able to add a lot of the clutter in here. On the side tables, I'm kind of imagining that either this is one sim who keeps multiple things on both sides, or it's two sims and it's a couple. And so on one side, there's like an open journal, as if like they write in it every day, and then a little like watch and glasses tray. And then on the other side, there's like a basket with a plant and some books. And now we are getting into the landscaping. And when I was looking around on some of the landscaping that's around the area, I noticed there's like already a few trees in the front yard, like outside of the bounds of the lot. There's quite a few trees in the surrounding area, and so I didn't want to oversaturate the trees, so I only did one in the backyard. And then we go around the edges of the front and kind of add a lot of like that low-lying foliage, some of those big bushy flowers. I didn't want to overdo it, but I also didn't want this lot to feel too kempt. So things like here, where around the chicken coop, we're adding, you know, some grass that's a little bit more overgrown. I can imagine that the sim who lives here added that for their chickens as a way to kind of let them feed, let them feel like they're in a more natural space. And so now that we're doing terrain paint, we are actually getting towards the end of the build. So I'm gonna hop over into my game and I will meet you there. So here we are in game for our build tour, and as you can see, the front yard here, just like I talked about, we've got all of this landscaping here, we've got our mailbox all set up, those planter boxes on the front porch, and then I'm gonna come inside, and there's not too much, obviously, it's still like a very small space, but I love a lot of the cute little details because they really tell the story of this sim. So for example, the image that I talked about that's very aspirational for them wanting to eventually move to Chestnut Ridge, them wanting to eventually move to Henford-on-Bagley, own their own ranch, their own farm. So they've got their sort of front door sort of things like their shoes and their coat rack. We have the little living space, which has the TV, some puzzles, some books, as well as the big bookshelf. You know, it's one of those things where I can imagine that like they were mid-reading a book. So very cute stuff. We have our little dining room area just right off the kitchen. We have our little dining room area just right off of the kitchen that has our little violin here. So I can imagine that the sim kind of does that in their free time as a fun little activity. In the bedroom over here, we've got just a very simple bed from Horse Ranch. We have our 2 side tables. Over here, we've got the desk. I decided on no computer because I think that this sim might not have a computer just because, you know, it's something that they wanted to work up to, but not quite something they would start out with. But they do have this loom here. This loom is not an actual usable item as far as like crafting, but I think that it's a cute detail. And then over here, we have the bathroom as an ensuite bathroom. So we have the shower, toilet, sink, very basics for a bathroom, but I think it's realistically all that you need to start out. And then the piece de resistance, the backyard. So back here we have our trash can, our bike, our little skill building corner with our flower arranging table and our handiness bench. We have our little entertaining space with the grill and the picnic table. We have the recycling machine, and then back here, the little garden area with the chicken coop and the garden planters. So that is our build. So if you want to find this on the gallery, my username is SocialSim99, and you can find this under Tiny Cottage. It unfortunately does have quite a few packs outside of the inspo packs, but you know, some of those items are very replaceable. It's totally up to you. I would love to do like a limited pack build one day, so feel free to leave any suggestions you have in the comments. I'm happy to take those suggestions. So that is it for now. If you'd like to see more speed builds, feel free to subscribe or even check out my Twitch channel. That's going to be linked down in the description. If you have any build suggestions or really any gameplay suggestions in general, feel free to comment that down below. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye.